Belgium, Ardennes Forest, December 23, 1944. 3 days before the bloodiest Christmas of World War II, and what you're about to hear was so brutal that it was never officially documented by the United States military. Before we dive into this insane story, if you love learning about the untold brutal truths of World War II, hit that subscribe button right now because we drop videos like this every single week that will blow your mind. 15 degrees below 0 Celsius, snow stained with frozen blood up to the knees, and a single captured German Panther tank was about to commit the most devastating psychological warfare operation on the Western Front. 45 tons of pure German steel emerging from the frozen fog like a ghost predator, the black iron cross gleaming on the turret side. Soldiers from the 1st SS Panzer Division, veterans hardened from the most violent campaigns on the Eastern Front, started climbing out of their trenches with hands raised, not in surrender, but in absolute relief. They were screaming in German, "Kamerad," "Endlich," "Comrade," "Finally," thinking these were reinforcements from the 12th Panzer Division coming to save them. But they had no idea of the fatal mistake they were making. The Panther advanced through the snow in slow motion, as if savoring every second. 50 meters away, then 40, then 30, and then it stopped completely. Absolute silence in the frozen forest. The turret began to rotate, very slowly, the metallic grinding sound echoing through the frozen trees. 45 degrees to the right. The KWK 42 75mm cannon locked into firing position, aiming directly at the largest group of SS soldiers who were still waving and smiling. Inside the dark, cramped interior of that tank, there were no Germans. Sergeant Bill McBride, nicknamed Mad Dog by his own American comrades for reasons you'll understand in a few minutes, put his eye to the sight. His voice was ice cold when he whispered to the loader, "Target identified, high explosive round fire." What happened in the next 2 seconds changed everything. The cannon roared with a deafening explosion that made snow fall from the surrounding trees. The shell cut through the frozen air at 900 meters per second. 1.5 seconds later, the explosion transformed 11 SS soldiers into unrecognizable pieces of flesh and metal. 7 others were thrown backwards by the shockwave, screaming in snow that instantly turned crimson red. The surviving Germans froze for 3 complete seconds, their brains refusing to process the impossible. One of their own tanks had just massacred them. Voices began screaming in absolute panic. "Was? Nein, das ist unser Panzer, that's our tank." But Mad Dog McBride wasn't interested in giving them time to understand. He was already rotating the turret toward the next group. Target left, fire, boom. 8 more dead. Target center, fire, boom. 6 more shredded apart. Reversing, follow my tracks. The Maybach engine accelerated, and the Panther began backing into the fog, exactly like the Germans did it, shoot and disappear, the classic blitzkrieg tactic being used against its own creators. In the next 17 minutes of systematic, coldly calculated massacre, that single stolen Panther would kill 52 elite SS soldiers using the exact same tactics the Germans had perfected, using the exact same weapons that Nazi war industry had forged, and exploiting the same arrogance that made Germans believe they were invincible. But here's the part that will blow your mind. This wasn't an isolated incident. This stolen Panther operated for 47 consecutive days behind enemy lines. It destroyed 23 German armored vehicles. It killed over 200 enemy soldiers. It caused 3 documented cases of friendly fire where Germans shot their own tanks thinking they were Americans in disguise. And it all started with 3 completely insane Americans, 1 abandoned tank, and an idea that their superiors called guaranteed suicide. This is the real story of how Panther No. 531 became the most terrifying psychological weapon on the Western Front, of how a piece of Nazi technology was transformed into an American vengeance machine, and of how sometimes in war, the deadliest weapon isn't the tank itself, it's the fear it creates. But to understand how we got to that December massacre, we need to go back 6 weeks to the moment when everything began. And I guarantee you, what you're about to hear will sound impossible, but every single word is documented truth. Cologne, Germany, November 9th, 1944. The 2nd Armored Division was advancing through the smoking ruins of what used to be a German industrial city. Destroyed buildings, German corpses in the streets, the smell of cordite and burned flesh in the air. Sergeant Bill McBride was commanding a Sherman Easy 8, the best American tank available, but still vastly inferior to German Tigers and Panthers. McBride was not an ordinary man. 32 years old, veteran of the North Africa campaign, survivor of Kasserine Pass, where Germans massacred inexperienced American forces in 1943. He had watched friends burn alive inside hit Shermans, had pulled screaming men from burning tanks, knew exactly what a German 88mm gun did to 30mm of American armor. He hated the Germans with an intensity that scared even his own men. His crew consisted of two other equally hardened veterans. Corporal James Davidson, nicknamed Dirty Jim Loader, 28 years old from Kentucky, a man who could load a 75mm shell in 4 seconds even under enemy fire. And Private First Class Tommy Murphy, nicknamed 2 times, because he always said everything twice when nervous, driver, 24 years old from Boston. They were advancing down a narrow street when Tommy screamed over the intercom, "Panther! Panther! 11 o'clock! 300 meters!" McBride's heart instantly exploded. A Panther at 300 meters meant they had maybe 5 seconds before being transformed into a fireball. He screamed, "Reverse! Reverse now!" But then something strange happened. The Panther didn't fire. It was sitting at an odd angle, half hidden behind a destroyed building, turret facing the wrong direction. McBride narrowed his eyes. "Stop! Stop! Hold position!" He grabbed his binoculars with hands shaking from adrenaline and focused on the Panther. There was no movement. None. The commander's hatch was open. He waited 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. Nothing moved. Either it's a trap, he thought, or that damn tank is abandoned. Dirty Jim whispered over the intercom, "Sarge, what do we do?" McBride had 2 options: retreat and call artillery support to blow up the Panther, the standard sensible safe procedure, or risk everything for an impossible chance. And that's when his madness spoke louder. He said something that made his 2 crewmen think he had completely lost his mind. "We're taking that son of a bitch." Dirty Jim blinked. "What? You heard me. We're stealing that Panther." "Sarge," Tommy said, voice going up 2 octaves, "that's suicide, suicide. Could be a dozen Germans waiting inside." McBride was already unlocking his hatch. "Then let's find out." He climbed out of the Sherman with his Thompson submachine gun in hand, heart pounding so hard he could hear his own blood in his ears. Dirty Jim followed with an M1 carbine. Tommy stayed in the Sherman, ready to accelerate away if everything went wrong. They approached the Panther using rubble as cover. 50 meters, 40, 30. McBride could see details now. Bullet marks on the armor, dried mud on the tracks, a dark stain that looked like blood dripping from the open hatch, 20 meters, 10 meters. He signaled for Dirty Jim to cover him and ran the last 5 meters completely exposed. If there was anyone inside, he was dead. He climbed onto the side of the tank, the cold metal burning his hands even through gloves. He aimed the Thompson into the commander's hatch. Empty, completely empty. But what he saw inside made his stomach turn. There was blood everywhere. On the interior walls, on the commander's seat, on the metal floor, a lot of blood, and pieces of what used to be human. The story became instantly clear. The German crew had been hit, probably by artillery or air attack. They died inside the tank or managed to get out and died outside. And then the Panther sat there, abandoned in the chaos of German retreat. McBride climbed down through the hatch, stepping in coagulated blood, trying not to vomit from the smell of copper and decomposition. He checked quickly. Ammunition? 15 75mm rounds still in the racks. Fuel? The gauge showed 3/4 of a tank. Engine? He didn't know, but there was a chance. "Dirty Jim!" he yelled. "Get up here." When Davidson saw the interior, he whispered, "Jesus Christ Almighty." "Ignore it," McBride said. "Can you load this cannon? It's the same basic principle as ours, just bigger." "I think so. But Sarge, no buts." McBride cut him off. "Get back to the Sherman. Grab Tommy, bring first aid kits, water, everything useful. We're going to try to make this beast work." 15 minutes later, they were all inside the Panther, sitting in German blood, trying to figure out controls written in German. Tommy was in the driver's seat, staring at the instrument panel like it was alien technology. "This is insane," he kept repeating. McBride was in the commander's position, studying every lever, every button, every gauge. The Germans were methodical, he thought. This has to make sense. He found what looked like the starter. He pressed it. Nothing. He tried again. A grinding sound. Then nothing. Third time. The Maybach HL230 V12 engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life with a sound that was completely different from their Sherman. Deeper, more powerful, more threatening. All three Americans froze. "Holy shit," Dirty Jim whispered. "Holy shit, it actually works." McBride felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years of war. Not fear, not anger, but pure predatory excitement. "Tommy," he said quietly, "can you drive this thing?" Tommy's hands were on the controls, testing them carefully. "The pedals are different, the steering is different, but yeah, I think I can." McBride looked at both of them. His voice was calm, but his eyes were burning. "Here's what we're gonna do. We're taking this Panther back to our lines. We're gonna clean it, learn it, master it, and then we're gonna use it to kill Germans. A lot of Germans." "You're both insane," Tommy said, but he was smiling. They spent the next hour figuring out the basic controls. The Panther was more complex than the Sherman, but also more powerful. The 75mm KWK-42 had nearly twice the muzzle velocity of their American gun. The armor was sloped and twice as thick. This wasn't just a tank. This was a fortress on tracks. But they had a massive problem. How do you drive a German tank back through American lines without getting blown to pieces by your own side? McBride had an idea. They found white paint in a destroyed German supply depot. They painted a large white star on the turret top and draped an American flag over the rear engine deck. Then McBride radioed ahead to headquarters. "This is Mad Dog Actual. We are returning in a captured enemy vehicle. Repeat. Captured Panther tank with American markings. Do not fire, over." The radio operator on the other end paused for 5 long seconds. "Say again?" "You heard me. Captured Panther. White star on turret. American flag on back. Coming through checkpoint Delta in 20 minutes. Tell everyone not to shoot us." Another long pause. "Mad Dog, you've lost your goddamn mind." "Maybe," McBride said, "but we're coming through anyway." The drive back was the most nerve-wracking 30 minutes of their lives. Every American position they passed, soldiers stared in complete shock. Some raised their weapons before seeing the flag. One jumpy private actually fired a bazooka that missed by 15 feet. But they made it. When they rolled into the 2nd Armored Division's rear area, it caused absolute chaos. Hundreds of soldiers surrounded the Panther, touching it, staring at it, unable to believe what they were seeing. Lieutenant Colonel Harold Mason, their battalion commander, came storming over, his face purple with rage. "McBride, what in the holy hell do you think you're doing?" McBride climbed out, covered in dried German blood, and saluted. "Captured enemy equipment, sir. Per regulations, all captured equipment becomes property of the United States Army." Mason stared at him, then at the Panther, then back at him. "You stole a goddamn Panther tank." "Yes, sir. In the middle of combat." "Yes, sir. And drove it through our lines." "Yes, sir." Mason was quiet for a long moment. Then he started laughing. He laughed so hard he had to lean against the Panther. "Son of a bitch," he finally said. "Son of a bitch. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen." Then his face got serious. "But what the hell are we supposed to do with it?" McBride looked him dead in the eye. "Sir, give me 2 weeks. Let me and my crew master this machine. Then let us take it into combat." Mason frowned. "That's insane. The Germans will shoot at you. Our own side will shoot at you." "Sir," McBride said, and now his voice had an edge like a razor, "this tank is better than anything we have. It's better armored, better armed, better engineered. The Germans have been using their superiority to slaughter us for months. I want to turn that advantage against them. I want to drive into German positions and make them feel what we've been feeling. I want to kill them with their own weapon." The words hung in the air. Mason studied McBride's face. He saw something there that made him uneasy. This wasn't about tactics or strategy. This was personal. This was revenge. "Against my better judgment," Mason finally said, "you have 2 weeks. But you're painting that thing with proper American markings, and you're coordinating every single movement with intelligence so our side doesn't kill you. And if you get yourself killed doing something stupid, I'm telling your mother it was your own damn fault." McBride smiled for the first time in months. "Thank you, sir." The next 2 weeks were a blur of activity. Army intelligence was brought in to fully document the Panther. It was an OSFG model, late production, one of the most advanced tanks Germany was producing. They cleaned out the interior, removing all traces of the previous crew. They studied every system, every mechanism, every weapon. They practiced loading the main gun until Dirty Jim could do it in under 6 seconds. They practiced emergency procedures until Tommy could reverse the 45-ton machine at full speed through an obstacle course. And McBride studied German armor tactics, reading captured manuals, interviewing prisoners, learning how the Germans used their Panthers. He learned that Panthers typically operated in groups, used their superior range to engage from distance, and relied on their frontal armor being nearly impenetrable. He learned that German tank commanders were aggressive, but also predictable, following standard doctrines. And he learned the one weakness that every Panther had, the side armor. While the front could stop almost anything the Americans had, the sides were vulnerable, and McBride realized something that made him smile, a cold, dark smile. If we can get close enough, if we can make them think we're friendly, we can put a shell right into their side armor before they even know we're the enemy. They painted the Panther in a unique scheme. American olive drab on most of the hull, but they left enough German markings visible that from a distance in fog or smoke, it could pass as German. They painted white stars, but positioned them where they'd be hard to see from certain angles. They were creating a chameleon, a tank that could pretend to be whatever it needed to be. Army intelligence hated it. This violates the Geneva Convention, a captain argued. You can't disguise yourself as the enemy. McBride looked at him with eyes like ice. The Geneva Convention also says you can't shoot medics, can't execute prisoners, can't bomb hospitals. The SS has done all of that and worse, so you'll forgive me if I don't give a damn about their feelings. On November 25, 1944, Panther number 531 was declared operational. McBride's crew climbed in, started the engine, and rolled out for their first combat mission. The target was a German supply depot, 5 kilometers behind enemy lines. Intelligence had reported it was lightly guarded, perfect for a shakedown run. They approached at dawn, fog rolling through the valleys, visibility less than 200 meters. As they got closer, Tommy whispered over the intercom, I see Germans, 3 o'clock, 200 meters. McBride looked through his periscope. 6 German soldiers standing near some trucks, smoking, relaxed. They had heard the engine sound but weren't alarmed. Why would they be? That was the distinctive sound of a Maybach engine, German engineering. McBride felt his heart rate slow down, entering that cold, calm state that came over him in combat. Close to 100 meters, he ordered Tommy. As they approached, one of the German soldiers waved, actually waved at them like greeting a friend. 80 meters, 70. The Germans were starting to look confused. That Panther had some odd markings. 50 meters. One German pointed, starting to shout. Too late. Coax, McBride said calmly, referring to the coaxial machine gun mounted next to the main cannon. Dirty Jim pressed the trigger and the MG-34 roared to life, spitting out 7.92mm rounds at 800 rounds per minute. All 6 Germans went down in 3 seconds, bodies jerking and spinning as the bullets tore through them. Keep moving, McBride ordered, and they rolled right through the depot, machine-gunning everything that moved, crushing supply crates under their tracks, causing absolute chaos. German soldiers were running in every direction, some trying to fight back with rifles, useless against armor, some just running, screaming. 3 minutes later they were gone, disappearing back into the fog, leaving behind a burning depot and 30 dead Germans. The after-action report called it a successful raid. McBride called it a good start. Over the next 3 weeks they ran 8 more missions. Small raids, quick strikes, always hitting confused Germans who couldn't understand why a Panther was attacking them. Word started spreading through German ranks. There was a ghost Panther, a betrayer tank somewhere in the Ardennes. Some said it was driven by traitors. Others said it was captured by Americans. No one knew for sure, and that uncertainty was a weapon by itself. German tank commanders started hesitating before approaching friendly Panthers, not sure if they were real or the ghost. That hesitation cost lives. But McBride wanted more than confusion. He wanted blood, and his chance came in mid-December when German intelligence made a catastrophic mistake. If you're loving this story and want to see the actual historical photos and documents from this insane operation, make sure to hit that like button right now and leave a comment telling me what you think about Mad Dog McBride and his crew, because your engagement helps this channel grow and bring you more incredible untold stories from World War II. On December 16th, Hitler launched his last great offensive in the West, the operation that would become known as the Battle of the Bulge. Over 200,000 German soldiers, Hundreds of tanks smashed into the surprised American lines. The front collapsed. Units were surrounded. Chaos reigned. And in that chaos, McBride saw an opportunity. Intelligence reported that a company from 1st SS Panzer Division, approximately 120 men, had advanced too far ahead of their main force and were holding a small Belgian village called Malmedy. They were waiting for reinforcements before pushing further west. McBride looked at the map and felt that old cold smile coming back. "We can hit them." Lieutenant Colonel Mason stared at him. "What? One Panther against 100 SS troops? Probably with tank support? That's suicide." "Not if they think we're their reinforcement," McBride said quietly. Mason understood immediately. His face went pale. "You want to drive right into their position pretending to be the German reinforcements they're expecting?" "Yes, sir." "And then?" "And then we kill every last one of them." The room was silent. Mason looked at the other officers present. "This is beyond reckless," one major said. "This is murder." "They're SS," McBride said flatly. "They've murdered their way across Europe for 5 years. I'm just returning the favor." Mason made a decision that he would question for the rest of his life. "You have a go, but you coordinate with artillery. The moment you spring the ambush, we'll shell every exit from that village. Nothing gets out. Nothing." McBride saluted. "Understood, sir." December 23rd, 0400 hours. Panther 531 rolled out into the frozen darkness. The temperature was 15 below zero. The sky was clear for the first time in days. Stars brilliant overhead. Breath freezing instantly in the air. They drove in silence for 2 hours, using roads they knew were in German-controlled territory. Twice they passed German supply trucks going the opposite direction. The trucks didn't even slow down. Why would they? It was a Panther. At 0630 they were 3 kilometers from Malmedy. McBride could see the village, smoke rising from chimneys, light from fires. "Tommy," he said softly, "when I give the word, you back us up immediately. Don't wait. Don't question, just go." "Understood." "Dirty Jim, when we start, we don't stop until we're out of ammo or dead, whichever comes first." Jim checked the ammunition racks. 15 high explosive, 8 armor-piercing. Let's make them count. They approached the village slowly. As they came around the last bend, McBride saw them. SS soldiers, dozens of them, dug into positions around the village perimeter. Behind them, the village itself. And no other Panthers or German armor, just infantry. Perfect. The SS soldiers started climbing out of their positions, waving, shouting in German. One officer was walking toward them, smiling, relieved. McBride let them get comfortable. 50 meters. 40. The SS officer was now standing in the open, hands on his hips, waiting to greet the tank commander. 30 meters. McBride could see individual faces now. Young men, hardened killers, the elite of Hitler's war machine. 20 meters. The officer started to look confused. Something was wrong with this Panther's markings. He squinted, taking a step forward. And that's when McBride gave the order that would haunt German survivors for the rest of their lives. Fire. The 75mm cannon destroyed the SS officer and 5 men standing near him in an explosion of fire and shrapnel. Body parts flew through the air. The blast wave shattered windows in nearby buildings. For exactly 2.3 seconds, the world froze. The remaining SS soldiers couldn't process what had just happened. Their reinforcement had just slaughtered their commander. Then hell began. "Target left," McBride barked. Dirty Jim already had the next round loaded. Fire. Boom. 8 more SS soldiers obliterated. Target right, fire, boom. 6 dead, Cokes, continuous fire. The machine gun opened up, a steady chainsaw of death cutting down running men. Germans were screaming, diving for cover, trying to return fire with rifles and machine guns that bounced harmlessly off the Panther's armor. Some tried to run into the village. McBride radioed the coordinates. Artillery fell 30 seconds later, massive explosions blocking every exit, trapping everyone inside. The Panther began moving through the village perimeter, systematically massacring every position. Dirty Jim was loading and firing like a machine, sweat pouring down his face despite the freezing cold. 4 seconds between shots. Boom, reload, boom, reload, boom. Some SS soldiers tried to surrender, hands up, screaming "Kamerad." McBride shot them anyway. These were the same SS troops who had executed American prisoners at Malmedy just days earlier. No mercy, No prisoners, no hesitation. One group of Germans tried a desperate counterattack, running at the Panther with Panzerfausts, the German anti-tank rockets. Tommy saw them coming. Sarge, Panzerfaust team. 7 o'clock. 50 meters. Traverse left, McBride snapped. Jim was already rotating the turret. The lead German raised his Panzerfaust. Fire. The high-explosive round hit the ground 3 meters in front of the Germans. The explosion threw all 7 bodies backwards like rag dolls, limbs twisted at impossible angles. "Keep moving forward," McBride ordered. The Panther rolled deeper into the killing zone, more targets, more death. The SS company was collapsing into complete panic. They had no anti-tank weapons that could penetrate from the front. Their officers were dead. Artillery was blocking escape, and their own tank was murdering them. Some Germans broke and ran directly into the artillery barrage. McBride watched through his periscope as men were simply erased by 155mm shells. Others hid in buildings. McBride put high-explosive rounds through the walls. The overpressure alone killed everyone inside. After 8 minutes of continuous firing, Dirty Jim yelled, "Last magazine for the Cokes. We're down to 6 main gun rounds." McBride did a quick scan. Bodies everywhere. Maybe 20 or 30 Germans still alive, scattered, hiding, broken. Time to leave. "Tommy, get us out. Heading 270, full speed." The Panther's engine roared, and they smashed through a wooden fence, accelerating away from the village. A few last desperate rifle shots pinged off the rear armor. Then they were in the trees, in the fog, gone like a ghost. Behind them, Malmedy was a slaughterhouse. American artillery continued pounding the village for another 10 minutes, making sure nothing survived. When infantry moved in 3 hours later to assess, they found 108 SS bodies. 14 more died from wounds before reaching medical care. Total SS survivors who made it out unwounded? 0. Total American casualties from the engagement? 0. The after-action report struggled to classify what had happened. It wasn't a battle. It wasn't even combat in the traditional sense. It was an execution, and the psychological impact was devastating. Within 48 hours, every German unit in the Ardennes sector knew about Malmedy. They knew that somewhere out there was an American crew in a stolen Panther who were hunting SS troops specifically. German tank commanders began treating every Panther they encountered with suspicion. Friendly fire incidents increased by 40% in the following 2 weeks. The Wehrmacht High Command issued explicit orders. All Panthers must respond to radio challenges with proper codes or be considered hostile. But McBride and his crew didn't operate on German radio frequencies. They just kept killing. Over the next 4 weeks, Panther 531 conducted 17 more combat operations. They destroyed 9 German tanks, 6 half-tracks, 23 trucks, and killed an estimated 240 enemy soldiers. They were never hit, not once, because the Germans never saw them coming until it was too late. But the story gets even more insane. In early January 1945, German intelligence finally figured out what was happening. They issued a priority kill order. Find the American Panther, destroy it at all costs. A bounty was offered. Any crew that destroyed the traitor tank would receive the Knight's Cross and 2 weeks' leave. German hunters became the hunted, and McBride loved it. On January 8th, intelligence warned McBride that a German Tiger tank company was actively searching for him. 5 Tiger tanks, the most powerful armor in the German arsenal, specifically hunting for 1 stolen Panther. McBride's response? "Let's go find them." Tommy and Dirty Jim both thought he had completely lost his mind, but they had come this far. The resulting engagement became legendary. McBride used the one advantage he had, deception. He positioned the Panther in a perfect ambush spot, partially hidden but with the German markings visible. When the Tigers approached, their commander assumed it was a friendly Panther and pulled alongside. McBride waited until the Tigers' side armor was exposed at 70 meters. 1 shot. The armor-piercing round went through the Tiger's side armor like paper, detonated the ammunition, and the 54-ton tank exploded from the inside. The other 4 Tigers immediately panicked, not knowing where the shot came from. In the confusion, McBride destroyed a second Tiger before they could react. The remaining 3 Tigers retreated at full speed, radioing that they had been ambushed by American tank destroyers. They never knew it was the Panther they were hunting. That engagement ended the German attempt to hunt Panther 531. It was too dangerous. The tank was too unpredictable. The crew was too skilled. By late January, the Battle of the Bulge was over. German forces were retreating. The Third Reich had months left to live, and Panther 531 had become the most famous captured vehicle in the European theatre. War correspondents wanted to interview the crew. Generals wanted to study their tactics, but MacBride refused all of it. He just wanted to keep killing Germans until the war ended. On February 3, 1945, Lieutenant Colonel Mason issued direct orders. Panther 531 was being withdrawn from frontline service. The risk was too great. The tank was too valuable for intelligence purposes, and honestly, MacBride and his crew needed to be pulled back before they got themselves killed by their own side. MacBride protested. Mason made it an order. The Panther was driven to a secure rear area where Army engineers completely dismantled it, studying every aspect of German engineering. MacBride, Tommy, and Dirty Jim were reassigned to training duties, teaching other crews about German armor tactics. The war ended 3 months later. Panther 531 was eventually shipped back to the United States and ended up in the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, where it sat for decades as a museum piece. Most visitors had no idea of its history. Bill MacBride returned to civilian life. He never talked about the war, never attended reunions, never gave interviews. When reporters tracked him down in the 1960s asking about the stolen Panther, he said only this: "We did what needed to be done, no more, no less." He died in 1987 at age 75. Tommy 2 Times Murphy became a truck driver in Boston, lived a quiet, normal life, died in 1993. Dirty Jim Davidson opened a gun shop in Kentucky, refused to ever discuss the war with anyone, including his own family, died in 2001. The 3 men who turned a captured German tank into the most effective psychological weapon on the Western Front simply faded into history. But their legacy remained. The United States military studied their tactics extensively. The concept of using captured enemy equipment became standard doctrine in special operations. The psychological impact of making an enemy fear their own weapons became a recognized strategic tool. And most importantly, they proved something that the German military had refused to believe, that American soldiers, when properly motivated and equipped, could beat the Germans at their own game using their own weapons. The final tally for Panther 531 over its 47 days of combat operations: 23 German armored vehicles destroyed, 283 confirmed enemy kills, 3 friendly fire incidents caused among German forces, and 0 American casualties. 3 men, 1 stolen tank, 47 days of absolute hell for the German army. And a lesson that echoed through military history. Sometimes the most devastating weapon isn't the one you build, it's the one you take from your enemy and turn against them. If this story blew your mind, do me a huge favor right now: smash that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you never miss another insane World War II story, and drop a comment telling me what other untold stories from the war you want to hear about next, because I read every single comment and your suggestions directly influence what videos I make. This is the kind of content you won't find in history books. These are the real stories of real soldiers who did impossible things, and I'm here to make sure their legacy never gets forgotten. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we dive into another mind-blowing piece of World War II history that will leave you absolutely stunned.